Hello, everyone. My name is Rita Tapp. I'm 28 years old, and my parents left me in a hospital bed a few hours after my brain surgery like I was already dead. I wish I was exaggerating. I wish this was one of those stories where everything looks cruel at first, but later someone explains it away. There was no misunderstanding. I remember the smell first. That sharp, sterile hospital smell that clings to your throat. My head felt like it had been split open and stitched back together with fire. Every sound echoed. Every light burned. I tried to move, but my body didn't feel like mine. My arm barely lifted. My mouth was dry. And the first thing I noticed was that my mother wasn't there. She had been there before the surgery, crying, holding my hands so tightly her nails pressed into my skin. "You're my strong girl," she kept whispering. My father was there too, pacing like he always did when he didn't know what to feel. He doesn't do emotions, but he showed up. I thought that meant something. I really did. But when I woke up, there was nothing. No familiar voices, no worried faces, no one fixing my blanket or asking the nurse questions. Just silence. And machines. I pressed the call button and a nurse came in, smiling gently like they're trained to do. "Your surgery went well," she said. "You're okay." I swallowed and whispered, "My mom?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough to feel wrong. "She stepped out," the nurse said. Something in her tone didn't sit right, but I was too weak to question it. So I waited. Minutes turned into an hour, then 2. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking each time expecting to see them there. They never were. Another nurse came in later, younger, quieter. She checked my IV without meeting my eyes. "My parents," I asked again. "Did they leave?" Her hands hesitated. Then she said, "They handled the billing earlier." Billing? The word didn't make sense. Not yet. The truth didn't hit me all at once. It came in pieces. A doctor came in that evening, calm, professional, but there was tension in his face. He explained the surgery again. The tumor had been benign, thankfully, but dangerous. Waiting longer could have caused permanent damage. I nodded, barely processing. Then he hesitated. "There's something we need to discuss regarding your account." That's when my stomach dropped. He told me my payment coverage had been withdrawn. "Withdrawn?" I whispered. "Yes, the deposit secured before your operation is no longer active." I stared at him. "My parents handled that." Another pause. "I'm aware." Then he said the sentence that still echoes in my head. "They requested a refund shortly after your surgery was completed." A refund, like I was something they regretted buying. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain refused to accept it. "No," I said. "That doesn't make sense." But it did. It made perfect, horrible sense when I thought about everything that came before. I was never the favorite child, not even close. That was my younger brother, Daniel. Smart, charming, everything my parents wanted to show off. Me? I was the problem. Not because I caused trouble. I didn't. I worked. I stayed out of trouble. But I asked questions. I didn't blindly agree. I wanted my own life, and to them, that made me difficult. When I was 17, I told my mom I wanted to study graphic design instead of business. She looked at me like I had insulted her. "That's not a real career," she said. A year later, Daniel wanted to start some random online business, and my dad invested money into it without hesitation. That was the pattern. Daniel tried something. He was ambitious. I tried something. I was irresponsible. So I stopped arguing. I worked part-time jobs, saved money, paid for my own courses. I moved out at 22, thinking distance would fix things. It didn't. It just made their indifference quieter. Then I got sick. The headaches had been getting worse for months. I thought it was stress, until one day I blacked out at work. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed with a doctor explaining there was a mass in my brain. I remember calling my mom. For the first time in years, she sounded scared. "We're coming," she said. And they did. They showed up, sat with me, talked to doctors, held my hand before surgery. It felt like maybe I had been wrong about them. That was my mistake. The day of the surgery, my mom hugged me tightly. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I know," I said, because for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. Then I woke up, and they were gone. Not just physically, financially, emotionally, completely gone. The hospital didn't throw me out, but everything changed. Quiet conversations, social workers, payment plans. I was lying there, barely able to sit up, while people discussed how I was going to pay for a surgery I didn't even remember. It wasn't just the money. It was the humiliation. Everyone knew. The nurses knew my parents had walked out. The staff knew. I could see it in their eyes, that mix of pity and disbelief. That night, when I thought it couldn't get worse, a man walked into my room. He wore a dark suit, completely out of place, calm, controlled. He walked up to my bed and placed an envelope gently on the blanket. "For you," he said. I blinked at him. "Who are you?" He gave a small nod. "Someone your grandmother asked to find you if something like this ever happened." My heart stopped. My grandmother? She had passed away 2 years earlier, or at least, that's what I had been told. And in that moment, I realized maybe that wasn't the truth either. My fingers trembled as I stared at the envelope. For a second, I didn't open it. I just held it there on the blanket, like it might disappear if I moved too fast. My grandmother was gone. That's what I had been told. That's what I had mourned, quietly, alone. So how could she be reaching me now? "Open it," the man said gently. I looked up at him. "Who are you?" "Your grandmother's attorney," he replied, "and the executor of her estate." Estate. The word didn't fit into my world at that moment. Not while I was hooked to machines, barely able to sit upright, trying to process the fact that my parents had walked away from me like I was nothing. "My parents handled her will," I said, my voice unsteady. He shook his head once, slow, certain. "No," he said. "They told you they did." Something cold settled in my chest. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, cream paper, slightly aged, and the moment I saw the handwriting, my breath caught in my throat. I knew it. Rita. "Rita," it began. My vision blurred. If you're reading this, then I was right to be worried. My hands tightened around the paper. "I don't trust your parents to do right by you. I've seen how they treat you, even when they think no one is watching." Something cracked inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, irreversible fracture. I've made arrangements, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Arrangements. The word echoed in my head as I kept reading. There are things you don't know about this family, things they have hidden from you. My breathing grew shallow. If they ever abandon you, and I believe they might, you will not be alone. The room felt too small. I looked up at the man again. "What does this mean?" "It means," he said calmly, "your grandmother planned for this." Planned. As if she had seen this exact moment. Me, lying in a hospital bed, alone, discarded, holding a letter that felt like the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. "That's not possible," I whispered. "It is," he replied, "and there's more." Of course there was. "There's a condition," he added. My stomach tightened. "A condition?" He met my eyes directly this time. "You only gain full control of the estate if your parents attempt to exclude you or harm you financially." The silence that followed pressed down on me like weight. "They have to betray me?" I whispered. He didn't hesitate. "Yes." My grip on the letter loosened. She believed they would. I didn't cry. Not then. I think I was too far past that point. Too numb. Too emptied out. The estate wasn't small. That was the next thing he explained. Properties, investments, assets my parents had clearly been expecting to inherit, waiting for, counting on. And now, it was all mine. Because they left. Because they chose to walk away from me, not realizing that choice would cost them everything. I leaned back against the pillow, my head throbbing, my thoughts spiraling. All those years. All those small moments I tried to ignore. The dismissive comments. The comparisons. The quiet way I was always placed second. I had told myself it wasn't that bad, that I was imagining it, that if I just tried harder, if I just became easier, quieter, more acceptable, things would change. But my grandmother saw it. She saw everything. And she didn't wait for it to destroy me. She prepared. The attorney stayed for a while longer, explaining details I could barely follow. Legal terms, timelines, next steps. I nodded when I was supposed to, but most of it drifted past me. Because one thought kept repeating in my head. They knew exactly what they were doing. My parents didn't leave because they were overwhelmed, or scared, or confused. They left because they thought I wasn't worth staying for. And worse, they thought the real future, the money, the security, was coming from my grandmother. To them. Not me. A slow, bitter understanding settled in. They didn't just abandon me. They calculated it. The following weeks blurred together. Recovery was slower than I expected. Some days, I could barely sit up without dizziness swallowing me whole. Other days, I forced myself to walk a few steps, gripping the wall like it was the only thing holding me upright. The hospital arranged a payment plan. I signed papers with shaking hands, every signature a reminder of what they had done. But I didn't call them. Not once. And they didn't call me either. No messages, no missed calls, no apologies. Nothing. That silence told me everything I needed to know. If there had been even a sliver of doubt left in me, it died there. By the time I was discharged, I wasn't the same person who had walked into that hospital. Something fundamental had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. The attorney stayed in contact, quietly guiding me through the legal process, making sure everything was secured, every document filed, every clause enforced. I didn't rush. I didn't chase them. I healed. Physically first, then slowly, something deeper. It took months before I felt steady again, before the headaches faded enough for me to think clearly, before I could look at my life without feeling like it had been split into before and after. And when I finally reached that point, I made a decision. I called them. I invited them to dinner. Neutral ground. A quiet restaurant. Public but not loud. The kind of place where people speak softly and watch each other carefully. They agreed almost immediately. Of course they did. Because by then, they already knew. And that was the third twist. They were already sitting when I arrived. My mother spotted me first. Her face lit up too quickly, like someone flipping a switch. "Rita," she said, standing halfway, hands hovering like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to touch me. "You look better." Better. I nodded once and took my seat. My father stayed seated, watching me the way he always did when he was trying to measure something. Risk, advantage, control. "I am," I said calmly. A waiter came, poured water, disappeared. No one spoke until the glasses stopped clinking. Then my mother leaned forward slightly. "We've been so worried about you," she said softly. I cut her off. "Don't." The word wasn't loud, but it stopped everything. Her mouth froze mid-sentence. My father's gaze sharpened. A pause stretched between us. Heavy. Uneasy. "You left me," I said, just as quietly. My mother swallowed. "Rita, In a hospital bed," I continued, not raising my voice. "Right after brain surgery." She looked down. My father leaned back in his chair, arms folding slowly. "We did what we had to do," he said. There it was. No apology, no denial, just justification. "For what?" I asked. "For the family," he replied, like that explained anything. The irony almost made me smile. "I am your family," I said. Silence. Not the soft kind, the suffocating kind. The kind that forces truth into the open, whether anyone wants it there or not. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. Gently. Precisely. My mother's eyes dropped to it instantly. My father didn't move, but I saw the shift in his jaw. "Go ahead," I said. She hesitated, then opened it. Paper slid against paper. Her fingers trembled as she turned the first page. The color drained from her face. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "I think you know." My father leaned forward now, snatching a glance at the document. His eyes scanned quickly, then hardened. "This isn't valid," he said. "It is," I replied. "I checked." His lips pressed into a thin line. My mother's hands shook as she held the pages like they might burn her. "You went behind our backs," she said, her voice breaking. I let out a small laugh. I couldn't help it. "You left me in a hospital bed." That landed. Her mouth opened, then closed. No defense came out this time. My father tried again. "You don't understand how complicated this is." "No," I said, meeting his eyes for the first time without flinching. "I understand it perfectly." Another silence. He looked away first. That was new. "You thought I didn't matter," I continued. "You thought I was expendable. And you thought the future, the real one, was coming from her." I tapped the document lightly. "Not me." Neither of them denied it. That was the part that surprised me the most. Not the betrayal, not the abandonment, but the absence of denial. Because in their minds, they were right. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Rita, please. We can fix this." "No," I said. Again, not loudly, not angrily, just final. "You made your choice," I continued. "Now I'm making mine." My father straightened slightly. "You're making a mistake." I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who had always made me feel small, uncertain, secondary. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel that way. "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." I stood up. My chair scraped softly against the floor. People at nearby tables glanced over, then looked away, sensing something they didn't want to be part of. My mother reached for my hand. I stepped back. Just enough. Not dramatic, not cruel, just clear. "You're not getting anything," I said. Her hand dropped. And that was it. No shouting, no scene, no desperate chase after me as I walked toward the door. Just quiet. Permanent quiet. They tried calling after that, a few times. Messages I never opened. Apologies that came too late and sounded too rehearsed. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted revenge, but because there was nothing left to say. I used part of the inheritance to pay off the surgery. Every cent. Not because I had to, but because I refused to carry that debt. Not financially, not emotionally. The rest? I used to build something of my own. A life they said wasn't real. A future they never believed in. And sometimes, late at night, I think about my grandmother, how she saw everything, how she understood the truth long before I was ready to face it, how she protected me, even after she was gone. I don't think this story is about revenge. It's about clarity, about finally seeing people for who they are, not who you wish they were. Because the people who abandon you at your weakest don't deserve to stand beside you when you're strong.